At my sister's engagement party, she grabbed the mic, grinning. Meet my maid of honor. Oh wait, no. She fake pouted. Too ugly for the role. Find someone prettier. The crowd laughed. Our parents clapped. Aunt Carol smirked. I smiled, not wounded but knowing. To love, I toasted, slipping her fiancé a small gift. His smile faltered. The music skipped. And suddenly no one was laughing anymore. Jennifer snatched the microphone from the band leader and tapped it twice. The feedback screech made everyone wince, but she just smiled that perfect smile of hers. Sorry, she laughed, not looking sorry at all. But I simply have to share something with all of you beautiful people. I was standing near the dessert table trying to blend into the background like I always did at these family events. The chocolate fountain gurgled next to me, and I watched wealthy guests in designer clothes sip champagne and make small talk about vacation homes and stock portfolios. As you all know, Jennifer continued, her voice carrying across the ballroom, choosing a maid of honor is such an important decision. Tradition says you pick your sister, right? A few people nodded and murmured agreement. I felt my stomach tighten. Where was she going with this? Well, I've been thinking about it for weeks. Jennifer's eyes scanned the crowd until they found me. That predatory gleam I knew so well flickered in them. And honestly, I just can't do it. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories about finding your voice. If you believe in standing up to family bullies, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need this courage. Now let's see how this unfolds. The room went quiet except for the soft jazz music playing in the background. Someone clinked a glass nervously. I gripped my champagne flute tighter, feeling the cool crystal against my palm. I mean, look at her, Jennifer said, pointing directly at me. Sweet little Sarah in her. What did you find that dress, the clearance rack at Walmart? A few people snickered. Harold Morrison, Dad's business partner, actually chuckled out loud. Mom covered her mouth, but I could see her shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Jennifer, Michael said quietly, but she waved him off. Oh, come on, Michael. She knows I'm just playing around. Don't you, sis? Jennifer's voice dripped with fake affection. The thing is, everyone, I need someone who can actually look good in photos. Someone who won't make my wedding album look like a before and after commercial. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Aunt Carol raised her wine glass in what looked like approval. Our parents were beaming at their golden daughter's performance. I forced my lips into a smile, the same fake expression I'd perfected over 32 years of being Jennifer's target. But something felt different tonight. Maybe it was the small wrapped box in my purse, the one I'd been carrying for 3 weeks. Maybe it was the way Michael was standing apart from Jennifer, his jaw clenched tight. So instead, Jennifer announced triumphantly, I've chosen my gorgeous sorority sister Madison as my maid of honor. Isn't she perfect? Madison waved from across the room, her blonde hair catching the chandelier light. She looked like she belonged in a magazine just like Jennifer. Perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect everything. The crowd applauded politely. I used the noise to move closer to the front, weaving between groups of guests who were already returning to their conversations about tennis tournaments and charity galas. Now, Jennifer said, finally setting the microphone back on its stand, let's toast to love and happiness. Everyone raised their glasses. The crystal clinked together in a symphony of wealth and privilege. But before anyone could drink, I stepped forward. Actually, Jennifer, I said, my voice carrying further than I'd expected in the suddenly quiet room. I'd like to make a toast too. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. Oh, how sweet of you, Sarah. Everyone, my sister wants to say something nice. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small white box I'd wrapped so carefully the night before. Simple white paper, silver ribbon. Nothing fancy. Just like me, according to everyone in this room. I brought you both an engagement gift, I said, holding the box out toward Michael. Something special I thought you should see. Michael looked confused but took a step forward. His hands weren't quite steady as he reached for the box. I noticed he'd been drinking more than usual tonight, probably trying to get through another one of Jennifer's performances. How thoughtful, Jennifer said, but I caught the slight edge in her voice. She didn't like surprises, especially ones she hadn't planned herself. I raised my champagne glass high, feeling the weight of every stare in the room. Mom looked proud, probably thinking I was finally going to say something gracious about her favorite daughter. Dad was checking his phone, already bored. Aunt Carol was smirking like she was waiting for another punchline. To love, I said clearly, watching as Michael began to untie the silver ribbon with trembling fingers. And to getting exactly what you deserve. The words hung in the air like smoke. Michael lifted the lid of the box and I watched his face change. First confusion, then recognition, then something that looked like panic. The small flash drive inside gleamed silver under the ballroom lights. What is it? Jennifer asked, trying to see into the box. But Michael had already closed it, his knuckles white against the white cardboard. The room was completely silent now except for the soft jazz music that suddenly seemed too loud. Even the chocolate fountain seemed to have stopped gurgling. I kept my glass raised, waiting. This was the moment I'd been planning for months. Not out of spite but out of survival. Jennifer had spent our entire lives making me feel small, worthless, invisible. She'd stolen my prom date, sabotaged my job interviews, and made family gatherings into public humiliation sessions. But tonight was different. Tonight I had something she didn't know about. Open it properly, Michael, I said softly. I think everyone would love to see what's inside. Jennifer's perfect smile was starting to crack around the edges. She reached for the box, but Michael pulled it closer to his chest. Maybe we should do this privately, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Oh no, I said, finally taking a sip of my champagne. Tasted like victory. I think everyone here deserves to see. After all, Jennifer loves sharing things with crowds. The silence stretched longer. Someone coughed. A woman in a red dress whispered something to her husband. The band had stopped playing entirely, sensing the tension in the room. And for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't the one everyone was staring at with pity or amusement. I was the one in control. The flash drive sat in Michael's palm like a tiny bomb waiting to explode. But as I watched his face go pale, my mind drifted back to another moment when I'd held all the power, only to watch Jennifer steal it away. I was 7 years old, standing on the elementary school stage in my blue dress with the white collar. Mom had spent weeks helping me memorize my lines for the spring play. I was going to be the narrator, the most important part. But 3 days before the performance, Jennifer convinced Mrs. Henderson that she'd be better suited for the role. Sarah's voice is so quiet, she'd said sweetly. I project much better. Mom had nodded in agreement. Jennifer does have more stage presence. I ended up as tree number 3, standing silently in the background while Jennifer delivered my carefully memorized lines to thunderous applause. That was the first time I learned to make myself smaller so she could be bigger. The pattern continued through middle school. Jennifer joined every club I showed interest in, then somehow managed to become president or captain within weeks. When I tried out for the debate team, she convinced the coach that having 2 sisters might create family drama that would hurt the team's focus. I was cut. She wasn't. High school brought the prom incident that everyone still talked about at family gatherings. Danny Patterson had asked me to junior prom 3 weeks ahead of time. I'd bought a pink dress, practiced dancing in my bedroom, and actually felt pretty for once in my life. Then Jennifer decided she wanted him. I found them kissing by the gymnasium doors the day before prom. Danny had the decency to look ashamed, but Jennifer just smiled and said, he realized he'd rather go with someone who knows how to have fun. When I cried that night, Mom sat on my bed and stroked my hair. Honey, Jennifer probably saved you from embarrassment. Danny's very popular. You might not have known how to handle that kind of attention. The words stung worse than watching them dance together the next night while I stayed home with a pint of ice cream and old movies. College was supposed to be my fresh start. State University, 3 hours away from Jennifer's private liberal arts school. For 2 glorious years I had my own friends, my own identity, my own small successes. I joined the campus literary magazine and even had a short story published. For the first time, people knew me as Sarah the writer, not Jennifer's awkward sister. But senior year, Jennifer transferred to my school. I want to be closer to family, she told our parents. What she really wanted was to make sure I didn't outshine her, even from a distance. She rushed my sorority and became social chair within a semester. She started dating the guy I'd had a crush on for months, even though she'd never shown interest in him before. She threw parties in our tiny shared apartment and invited everyone I knew, then spent the evenings making little comments about my weight, my clothes, my quiet personality. Sarah's such a homebody, she'd tell my friends. She'd rather read than have actual adventures. After graduation, I thought distance would finally give me peace. I moved across the state, found a job at the Millbrook Public Library, and created a life that had nothing to do with Jennifer. My tiny apartment above the bakery wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had my books, my garden, my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chin, who taught me to make dumplings on Sunday afternoons. For 3 years I was just Sarah. Not Jennifer's sister, not the disappointment, not the cautionary tale. The children who came for story time knew me as Miss Sarah, who did all the funny voices. The teenagers working on research papers trusted me to help them find exactly what they needed. The book club ladies invited me to their monthly wine and cheese gatherings. Then Jennifer decided to visit. She showed up on a Tuesday afternoon in her red BMW, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The library went quiet when she walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors like a countdown timer. "So this is where you work," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. How quaint. Mrs. Patterson, who'd been checking out romance novels for 15 years, looked embarrassed. The teenage boy researching colleges suddenly seemed fascinated by his shoelaces. "It's nice that you found something so fitting," Jennifer continued, running her manicured finger along the dusty spine of an old encyclopedia. "I mean, you always were more comfortable hiding in corners with books than actually living life." She stayed for an hour, chatting with patrons about her exciting job in marketing, her downtown apartment, her active social life. By the time she left, I felt invisible again. The confident woman I'd become over 3 years had shrunk back into the shadow Jennifer cast wherever she went. The visits became regular after that. Always unannounced, always disruptive. She'd comment on my unchanged hairstyle, my practical shoes, my adorable little life, with air quotes that made it sound like a consolation prize. When she started dating Michael Thompson, the visits increased. She needed an audience for her happiness, and I was convenient. She described their expensive dates, their weekend trips, the jewelry he bought her. She'd show me photos on her phone and wait for me to compliment her luck. "He's taking me to Paris next month," she announced during one visit. "His family has connections there. It's so nice to finally be with someone who can appreciate quality." The implication was clear. I would never be worthy of such treatment. The engagement announcement came via group text to the entire family. No personal call, no private conversation. Just a photo of her ring with the caption, "He finally did it. Planning the wedding of the century." I stared at that text for 20 minutes, sitting in my quiet apartment with a cup of tea going cold in my hands. I wasn't surprised she hadn't called me first. I wasn't even surprised when she didn't ask me to be her maid of honor. What surprised me was the follow-up text that came 3 days later. "You can help with decorations if you want. You're good with boring organizing stuff." That message sat in my phone like a splinter. Not the words themselves, but the casual dismissal they represented. 32 years of being treated like the consolation prize, the afterthought, the sister who was useful for manual labor but not worthy of standing beside her on the most important day of her life. I read that text over and over until the words burned themselves into my memory. And somewhere in that reading, something shifted inside me. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to shrink myself small enough to fit in Jennifer's shadow. Instead, I started planning. Planning turned out to be harder than I'd expected. I spent weeks sitting in my apartment staring at that text message, trying to figure out how to finally stand up for myself. The answer came from the most unexpected place. Mom called on a Thursday evening in March, her voice frantic. "Sarah, honey, I need your help. I'm trying to upload all these family photos to the cloud for Jennifer's engagement slideshow, but this computer is being impossible." I drove over the next morning, finding Mom surrounded by scattered photo albums and a laptop screen full of error messages. She'd been trying to digitize 30 years of family pictures, but technology had never been her strong suit. "I promised Jennifer I'd have everything ready by tonight," Mom said, wringing her hands. "She wants to show Michael all our family memories." I settled at the kitchen table and started working through the uploads. Baby photos, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. Jennifer smiling in every single one, me usually standing slightly behind her or cut off at the edge. Even in our family history, I was an afterthought. The computer was ancient and slow. Each photo took forever to upload and the internet kept cutting out. I was 3 hours in when a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. "Jennifer Thompson, Can't wait to see you tonight. I stared at the message. Jennifer Thompson. She'd already changed her last name in her social media accounts, even though they weren't married yet. The message wasn't from a family group chat or anything I recognized. Mom, whose cloud account is this? I asked. Oh, Jennifer set it up for me, she said from the kitchen where she was making sandwiches. She said it would be easier if we all used the same family account. Something about sharing being caring. Another message popped up, this one longer. Michael's working late again. Perfect timing. Bring the champagne you mentioned. My stomach dropped. The sender was listed as Aiden Matthews. I glanced toward the kitchen. Mom was humming while she cut crusts off sandwiches, completely oblivious. My finger hovered over the notification. I shouldn't click it. It was none of my business. But Jennifer had made everything about my life her business for 32 years. I clicked. The message thread opened and my breath caught in my throat. Months of conversations stretched down the screen. Flirtatious texts, photos I definitely shouldn't be seeing, and plans for secret meetings. Getting married in 3 months, Jennifer had written just last week. Then the real fun begins. You sure you can go through with it? Aiden had replied. Are you kidding? Do you know how much money his family has? 2 years of marriage, then a messy divorce. I'll get half of everything. We'll be set for life. I sat frozen, reading message after message. They'd been planning this for months. Jennifer was marrying Michael for his money, planning to divorce him as soon as she could claim a significant settlement, and then running off with Aiden. Sarah, how's it going in there? Mom called. Fine, I managed, my voice barely steady. Just a few more minutes. I scrolled further back, finding messages that made my skin crawl. Jennifer complaining about having to play the loving fiancé, when all she wanted was access to the Thompson family fortune. Aiden encouraging her to milk it for all it's worth. But the worst part came near the bottom of a conversation from 2 weeks ago. Had to visit my boring sister today, Jennifer had written. She's still working at that pathetic library, living in her sad little apartment. Honestly, Aiden, sometimes I feel bad for her. She's so naive, she actually thinks I care about family bonding time. Poor thing, Aiden had replied. Good thing she's too stupid to figure out what's really going on. Right? Sarah's always been slow on the uptake. She still thinks I'm the golden child who can do no wrong. It's actually hilarious how easily I can manipulate her into helping with wedding stuff. Free labor. The messages went on, detailing how Jennifer had been using me as unpaid help while laughing about my stupidity behind my back. How she'd deliberately chosen Madison as her maid of honor to hurt me, knowing I'd expected to be asked. How she told Aiden all about my failed relationships and lack of social life for their entertainment. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if our parents had actually paid attention to her instead of me, Jennifer had written. But then I remember how boring she is. At least my success makes the family look good. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through months of evidence. Screenshots wouldn't be enough. I needed something more substantial. I found the video folder by accident, clicking the wrong icon while trying to close the messages. Jennifer's face filled the screen, clearly intoxicated, sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Aiden, you're recording me, she laughed, throwing a pillow at the camera. Stop it. Come on, tell me the truth. Aiden's voice came from behind the camera. Are you really going to go through with marrying this guy? Of course I am, Jennifer giggled. Do you know how much his family's construction company is worth? Plus his trust fund kicks in when he turns 35. That's next year, baby. She took a long sip from what looked like a wine glass. 2 years of playing house, then boom. Divorce settlement. We'll be rich and I'll never have to see Michael or his boring family again. What about your sister? Aiden asked. Won't she be suspicious? Jennifer burst out laughing. Sarah? Are you serious? She's so desperate for my approval she'll believe anything I tell her. I could rob a bank and she'd find a way to justify it. She's been my useful little puppet since we were kids. The video continued for another 10 minutes. Jennifer detailing her plans, mocking Michael's trust in her, making cruel jokes about my appearance and personality. Each word felt like a physical blow. But instead of the familiar shame and hurt, something else was building inside me. Something cold and calculating that I'd never felt before. I ejected a flash drive from Mom's desk drawer and started copying files. Screenshots, videos, bank information that showed money transfers between Jennifer and Aiden's accounts. Everything that proved what they were planning. "Sarah, honey, how much longer?" Mom called. "Almost done," I said, watching the progress bar creep forward. "Just backing everything up to be safe." When the copying finished, I closed all the windows and cleared the browser history. Then I finished uploading the innocent family photos Mom wanted, my hands steady despite the storm raging in my chest. "All set," I announced, walking into the kitchen. "The photos are uploaded and ready for Jennifer's slideshow." "Oh, wonderful." Mom beamed. "You're such a good sister, always helping out. Jennifer's so lucky to have you." I smiled and accepted a sandwich, chewing mechanically while my mind raced. For the first time in my life, I had something Jennifer didn't know I possessed. And for the first time in my life I was going to use it. The drive home from Mom's house took forever, my mind spinning with possibilities. The flash drive sat in my purse like a loaded weapon, and I spent the entire evening staring at it on my kitchen table. Having the truth was one thing. Knowing what to do with it was something else entirely. The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Instead of cataloging books and helping patrons, I sat at my laptop with a cup of coffee and started planning. My first instinct was to call Michael directly, tell him everything and let him handle it. But that felt too simple, too private. Jennifer had spent decades humiliating me in public. She deserved the same treatment. Then I remembered something she'd mentioned during one of her library visits. She was planning a surprise slideshow for the engagement party, filled with photos and videos from their relationship. She'd asked several family members to contribute, but she'd been frustrated because Michael wasn't cooperating. "He's being so weird about sharing photos," she'd complained. "Like, what's the point of dating someone if you can't show off your happiness?" That gave me an idea. I pulled up Michael's contact information from the family group chat and sent him a carefully worded text. "Hi Michael. Jennifer mentioned she's struggling to get photos for the engagement slideshow. I'd love to help surprise her. Could you share some of your favorite pictures and videos from your relationship? I promise to keep it secret until the party." He responded within an hour. "That's really thoughtful, Sarah. Jennifer's lucky to have such a caring sister. I'll send some files over tonight." The photos arrived in my email by evening. 2 years of relationship documentation. Vacations, dinners, family gatherings, quiet moments at home. Looking through them, I noticed something interesting. Michael's smile seemed forced in the recent pictures. His eyes looked tired. In the older photos he appeared genuinely happy, but that joy had gradually faded. I selected the most telling images and started building my own slideshow. Not the romantic montage Jennifer was expecting, but something far more revealing. Over the next week I began inserting myself into their lives more strategically. I volunteered to help with wedding preparations, offering to coordinate with vendors and handle logistics. Jennifer was delighted to have free assistance. "Finally, you're being useful," she said during one of our planning sessions at her downtown apartment. "I was starting to think you didn't care about my happiness." I smiled and took notes on catering options while secretly studying her behavior. She was stressed, constantly checking her phone and making hushed calls that she claimed were work-related. When Michael was around, she seemed to be performing rather than relaxing. During one visit, Michael mentioned concerns about their venue deposit. "Maybe we should consider somewhere less expensive," he suggested. "The Thompson Industries quarterly reports haven't been great lately." Jennifer's facade cracked for just a moment. "We're not changing venues, Michael. This is my dream wedding." "But if the company is struggling..." "Your family has money," she snapped. "Stop being so paranoid about finances." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. I pretended to be focused on my laptop, but I was absorbing every word, every gesture, every sign that their relationship was built on shaky ground. Meanwhile, I decided to test Aiden. Using an anonymous messaging app, I created a fake account and reached out to him with a simple message. "I know about you and Jennifer." His response was immediate and panicked. "Who is this? What do you want?" "Just watching," I replied. "Interesting how she shares your private conversations with others." The next few days brought a flood of increasingly frantic messages from Aiden, demanding to know who I was and what I knew. I didn't respond, but I saved every word. His paranoia was exactly what I'd hoped for. The effect on Jennifer was immediate. She became suspicious and irritable, constantly questioning Michael about his friends and co-workers. She accused him of sharing details about their relationship, which he vehemently denied. "Someone knows about us," she hissed during a phone call I overheard while picking up wedding favors. "Someone's been asking questions." "You're being paranoid," Aiden replied, his voice tinny through the speaker. "Just stick to the plan." But Jennifer wasn't satisfied. She started showing up at my library more frequently, studying my face for signs of deception. She questioned me about my social life, my coworkers, anyone I might have spoken to about the family. "You haven't been gossiping about my relationship, have you?" she asked one afternoon, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Some people have been asking weird questions." "Of course not," I said, stamping books with practiced calm. "I barely know Michael beyond family gatherings." The week before the engagement party, everything started accelerating. Michael postponed their venue tour, citing work pressures. Jennifer ranted to Mom about his cold feet and annoying practical concerns. She was losing control of her carefully orchestrated plan, and the stress was showing. I spent those final days perfecting my presentation. The flash drive contained everything I needed, but timing would be crucial. Too early and people might leave before seeing everything. Too late and Jennifer might find a way to spin the situation. The night before the party, I stood in my bathroom mirror and practiced my toast. My voice needed to be steady, confident, but not aggressive. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was simply revealing the truth. "To love," I said to my reflection, raising an empty water glass. "And to getting exactly what you deserve." The words felt powerful coming out of my mouth. For 32 years I'd been the quiet one, the background sister, the one who absorbed Jennifer's cruelty without fighting back. But tomorrow night that would change. I chose my outfit carefully. A simple navy dress that Mom had once said made me look presentable. Jennifer would probably mock it, but that was part of the plan. I needed to look like the same harmless sister everyone expected me to be. The morning of the party, Jennifer called 3 times with last-minute requests. "Pick up the flowers. Double-check the catering setup. Make sure the slideshow equipment was working properly." "I'm so nervous," she confessed during the final call. "What if something goes wrong?" "Everything will be perfect," I assured her, and for the first time in my life I meant it. Walking into that ballroom hours later, I felt different. Not confident exactly, but purposeful. The flash drive in my purse felt like a secret weapon, and I was finally ready to use it. Jennifer was holding court near the champagne fountain, radiant in her designer dress and perfect makeup. She didn't notice the way Michael stood slightly apart from her, or how his smile never quite reached his eyes. She certainly didn't notice the small wrapped box I carried, or the way my hands remained steady despite the magnitude of what I was about to do. For the first time in our relationship, I knew something she didn't. And I was going to enjoy every second of her finding out. Michael stared at the flash drive for what felt like an eternity. The crowd had started a rhythmic chant of, "Open it. Open it." But he just stood there, turning the small device over in his palm like he was afraid it might bite him. "Come on, honey," Jennifer said, moving closer to him. "Sarah's being so sweet, bringing us a little gift. Let's see what it is." She reached for the flash drive, but Michael pulled his hand away. Something in his expression had changed. The polite mask he'd been wearing all evening was starting to slip. "Michael." Jennifer's voice carried a note of uncertainty I'd never heard before. "What's wrong?" He looked across the room at me, and I saw recognition dawning in his eyes. Not of what was on the drive yet, but of the fact that this moment was significant. That I wasn't just the quiet sister making a harmless gesture. "There's a projector set up for your slideshow," I said helpfully, gesturing toward the large screen at the front of the ballroom. "Might be easier for everyone to see." The crowd murmured agreement. Someone called out, "Put it on the big screen." A few people clapped excitedly, thinking they were about to see romantic photos or a sweet engagement video. Michael's hands were shaking now, but he walked slowly toward the projector. Jennifer followed, her heels clicking nervously against the marble floor. The crowd gathered closer, wine glasses in hand, expecting entertainment. "This is silly," Jennifer laughed, but the sound was strained. "Sarah, what could you possibly have that we'd want to share with everyone?" I raised my champagne glass again, watching as Michael inserted the flash drive into the projector with trembling fingers. "Oh, I think you'll find it very interesting." "We all will." The screen flickered to life, and suddenly Jennifer's face filled the wall-mounted display. She was laughing in what looked like a hotel room, a wine glass in her hand, her hair tousled. The audio crackled through the ballroom sound system. "Aiden, you're recording me again," her voice echoed across the silent room. "I told you to stop." The crowd went completely still. Jennifer's face on the screen was radiantly happy, glowing with an intimacy that everyone in the room could recognize. But the Jennifer standing next to the projector had gone white as her engagement dress. "Turn it off," she whispered, but her voice was drowned out by the audio continuing to play. "Tell me the truth." Aiden's voice came through the speakers. "Are you really going to marry this boring guy?" Jennifer burst into laughter on screen. "Of course I am. Do you know how much his family is worth? Michael's so naive he actually thinks I love him." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Glasses clinked as people set them down hard on tables. Someone near the back said, "Oh my God." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. But the video wasn't finished. "The best part," Jennifer continued on screen, taking another sip of wine, "is that once I marry him I'll divorce him and take half of everything. His father's construction company will practically be mine. 2 years of playing house and then I'll be set for life." Michael stumbled backward, his face cycling through confusion, hurt, and growing rage. His father, who'd been standing near the bar, pushed through the crowd with murder in his eyes. "That prenup you signed," Mr. Thompson's voice boomed across the ballroom, "is officially void. Fraud nullifies everything, Jennifer." But the flash drive had more to offer. The screen switched to a new video, this one showing Jennifer and Aiden in what was clearly an intimate situation. The timestamp showed it was from the same week Michael had proposed. "Turn it off," Jennifer shrieked, lunging for the projector. But Michael caught her arm, his grip firm enough to stop her. "No," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "I think we should all see what my fiancé has been up to." The crowd was transfixed. Aunt Carol was recording everything on her phone. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The catering staff had stopped serving and were openly staring at the disaster unfolding. The video continued, showing Jennifer bragging about manipulating Michael, mocking his trust, and detailing her plans to take his money and run. Each revelation hit the crowd like a physical blow. "This is fake," Jennifer screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "Sarah doctored these videos. She's always been jealous of me." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence was too detailed, too consistent, too obviously real. And besides, everyone could see her face clearly in every frame. Michael finally spoke, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "The engagement is off." He pulled the engagement ring from Jennifer's finger with one sharp motion. She tried to resist, but he was stronger and more determined. "Michael, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Let me explain. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," he replied, pocketing the ring. "And apparently it's what everyone else thinks too." The crowd was buzzing now, voices rising as people processed what they'd witnessed. Business associates were pulling out their phones, already calculating how this scandal would affect their relationships with the Thompson family. Family friends were whispering about how they'd always suspected something was off about Jennifer. Mrs. Patterson from the library, who'd somehow ended up at this party, caught my eye across the room and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Even she could appreciate a well-executed plan. "You did this," Jennifer hissed, spinning to face me. Her perfect makeup was streaked with tears, her hair falling out of its elegant updo. "You planned this whole thing." I finished my champagne and set the glass down on a nearby table. "I simply shared some family videos, Jennifer. Isn't that what parties are for? Sharing memories." The flash drive had reached its final clip, the one where Jennifer mocked me specifically, calling me too stupid to figure out what was happening, laughing about how easily she could manipulate me into helping with her wedding preparations. "Poor boring Sarah," her voice echoed from the speakers. "She actually thinks I care about having her as my maid of honor. As if I'd want someone so pathetic standing next to me on my special day." The room went dead silent again. Everyone turned to look at me, finally understanding the full scope of what had just happened. I straightened my simple navy dress and smiled, not the fake pained smile I'd worn for 32 years, but something genuine and satisfied. "Well," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the stunned ballroom, "I suppose that answers the question about family loyalty." Jennifer opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in her life, she had absolutely nothing to say. The music had stopped. The projector screen went dark. And in the silence that followed, I finally heard something I'd been waiting my entire life to experience. The sound of Jennifer's perfect world crashing down around her. The silence stretched for 10 heartbeats before Jennifer's composure completely shattered. She lunged toward me, her manicured nails extended like claws, desperation replacing the polished perfection she'd worn all evening. "You destroyed everything," she screamed, grabbing for my arm. Her nails dug into my skin, but I didn't flinch. I'd endured worse from her over the years, just never in front of an audience. I gently pulled my arm free and smoothed down my navy dress, the same one she'd called clearance rack special just hours ago. "I didn't destroy anything, Jennifer. I simply let people see what was already there." "The cloud backup," I continued, my voice calm and steady. "Amazing how technology works these days. Everything gets saved automatically. Even the things we'd rather keep hidden." Her face crumpled as the full weight of her situation hit her. The guests around us were no longer pretending to look away. Phones were pointed in our direction, recording every moment of her breakdown. By tomorrow morning, this would be all over social media. Michael was already halfway to the exit, his parents flanking him like bodyguards. Mr. Thompson stopped only long enough to speak to someone who looked like a lawyer, their heads bent together in urgent conversation. "Michael, wait." Jennifer called after him, her voice breaking. But he didn't turn around. The ballroom doors closed behind the Thompson family with a definitive thud that echoed across the marble floor. That's when the real chaos began. The wedding planner appeared at Jennifer's elbow, her clipboard clutched tight against her chest. "Miss Henderson, we need to discuss the cancellation policies. The vendors are asking about their deposits." "Deposits?" Jennifer's voice climbed an octave. "What deposits?" "The florist alone is owed $12,000, the planner continued grimly. "The caterer, the band, the photographer, they all require payment whether the wedding proceeds or not." I watched the color drain from Jennifer's face as she realized the financial implications. She'd been counting on Michael's money to cover everything. Without him, she was looking at crushing debt from a wedding that would never happen. "But Michael signed the contracts," she stammered. "His father's company guaranteed payment." The wedding planner shook her head. "Actually, miss, you signed as the primary contact. The financial responsibility falls to you." Across the room, Madison, the gorgeous sorority sister who was supposed to be maid of honor, was quietly gathering her things. When Jennifer spotted her heading for the door, she called out desperately, "Madison, where are you going? You're my best friend." Madison paused, her perfect blonde hair catching the chandelier light. "Jennifer, I can't be associated with this. My reputation." "Your reputation?" Jennifer's laugh was hysterical now. "What about mine?" "What reputation?" Madison asked coldly. "After tonight, you don't have one." And with that, she was gone, leaving Jennifer standing alone in the center of the ballroom while guests filed past her toward the exits. Our parents finally approached, Dad's face grim and Mom wringing her hands. I braced myself for the lecture about family loyalty, about how I should have handled this privately. Instead, Dad looked at Jennifer with something I'd never seen before, disappointment. "How could you do this to that boy?" he asked quietly. "His family trusted you." "Daddy, please," Jennifer sobbed. "Sarah set me up. She planned this whole thing to hurt me." But Mom was studying me with new eyes, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "Sarah, did you know about the affair?" "I found evidence," I said simply. "I thought Michael deserved to know before he made the biggest mistake of his life." Dad nodded slowly. "You did the right thing." Jennifer stared at him in shock. "The right thing?" "She humiliated me in front of everyone." "You humiliated yourself," Mom said softly. "We saw the videos, honey. That was you choosing to betray Michael. Sarah just chose to let the truth come out." Aunt Carol approached with her wine glass still in hand, a satisfied smirk playing at her lips. "Well, that was certainly entertaining. Best party I've been to in years." "This isn't funny," Jennifer snapped. "Oh, but it is," Carol replied. "Karma has such a delicious sense of timing." The catering staff was already cleaning up, stacking chairs and collecting abandoned champagne glasses. The band packed their instruments while the photographer deleted photos from her camera. Within an hour, all evidence of Jennifer's engagement party would be gone except for the videos now circulating on social media. Jennifer turned to me one last time, her makeup streaked and her hair falling out of its elaborate style. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since you sent me that text about decorations," I admitted. "The moment you made it clear I was only good enough to be your unpaid help. I was trying to include you." I shook my head. "You were trying to use me. There's a difference." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to realize how hollow any protest would sound. Instead, she gathered what was left of her dignity and walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown timer running out. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at me. "This isn't over, Sarah." "Yes," I said quietly, "it is." After she left, I stood alone in the gradually emptying ballroom. The chandelier still sparkled overhead, the flowers still looked beautiful on their tables, and the chocolate fountain still bubbled cheerfully. It had been a perfect party, just not the kind Jennifer had planned. Mrs. Chun from my neighborhood appeared beside me, having somehow witnessed the entire spectacle. "Sarah, dear, that was quite something." "I hope it wasn't too awful," I said. She patted my arm gently. "Sometimes the truth needs help finding its way into the light. You just gave it a little push." As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and found 17 missed messages. Friends from work, neighbors, even distant cousins who'd somehow already heard about the evening's events. But I turned the phone off without reading them. Tomorrow there would be consequences. Jennifer would probably try to spin this as my fault, paint herself as the victim of a jealous sister's scheme. There might be family drama, awkward conversations, and relationships that would need rebuilding. But tonight, driving home through the quiet streets to my small apartment above the bakery, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 32 years. Peace. I'd spent my entire life making myself smaller so Jennifer could be bigger. Tonight I'd finally stood up to my full height. And it turned out I was tall enough to cast my own shadow. The navy dress that Jennifer had mocked hung perfectly on my frame. My reflection in the rearview mirror showed clear eyes and a genuine smile. For the first time in my life, I looked exactly like who I was supposed to be. If this story of perfect justice had you holding your breath, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Sarah calmly handed Michael that little white box, knowing exactly what would happen next. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.